What's going on, guys? Today we are in the Bergen-Belsen Concentration Camp in northern Germany for the burial site of one of the most famous figures of the Holocaust, Anne Frank. She was a diarist and was killed here at this camp at age 15 years old along with her sister Margot. Her grave is right over here, and Anne Frank is important because she represents the 1.5 million children who died in the Holocaust. 30,000 Jews were killed at this camp between 1943 and 45. And here's the gravestone right here. Before we get into her life story here, I just want to mention, if you would like a more in-depth look at the Bergen-Belsen Concentration Camp, I highly recommend you check out my video on it. The link will be in the cards right at the top corner of the screen. Anne Frank was born on June 12, 1929 in Frankfurt, Germany, to a Jewish family. Her older sister Margot was born in 1926. When Anne was just 4 years old in 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to prominence in Germany, and with their anti-Semitic values and beliefs that the Nazi Party had, their family got really scared and decided to leave the country in 1934, which was the same year that Adolf Hitler was declared Führer after the death of President Paul von Hindenburg. Hitler was declared Führer and took over the government the same year. They left to the Netherlands and lived in Amsterdam for the next 7 years or so in peace. Her father, Otto Frank, was a business owner in Amsterdam, and eventually things went downhill because throughout the 1930s, Hitler was expanding the Third Reich. The SS come out, who is basically the Nazi top dogs, and Hitler has the ideology of Lebensraum, which is the idea of annexation of countries throughout Europe to strengthen the Third Reich. Late in the 1930s, Hitler commands the Anschluss, the annexation of Austria, and then later on Czechoslovakia and the Sudetenland. And then in 1939, invades Poland and starts World War II. The next year, 1940, was one of the greatest years, and I don't mean great positively. I mean great as in most advanced year for the Nazis was 1940. They advanced into many territories. They conquered France that year, Denmark, and including the Netherlands. The Netherlands, where Anne Frank was staying, came under German control. And in 1942, her sister, Margot, got a letter from the SS saying that she was to report to Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp to work in slave labor. And so her parents decided to move the entire family into hiding in Otto's business. And when Anne turned 13 on her birthday, she was given a diary in 1942. And just about every day, or at least every week, until she was captured, she kept a diary entry going. And little did she know that that would be one of the most famous documents to come out of Nazi Germany. They were successfully hidden for about 2 years until August of 1944, when an unknown Dutch woman betrayed them, and the SS officers came into their hiding spot and captured them. Originally, the family was interred at a prison camp in the Netherlands before being transported to Auschwitz. And when they were transported to Auschwitz, it took them 3 days on a cattle car. They transported Jews across Europe on cattle cars. It was extremely overcrowded, so if you're claustrophobic, that is not a fun time for you. There was no food, and everyone was crammed, and you were forced to stand for 3 days straight. You couldn't sit down. It was completely miserable, and Anne was only 15 at the time. She was at Auschwitz for about 2 months until November, when 9,000 women were transported to the Bergen-Belsen Concentration Camp to work in a new women's firm that they created here at this camp. She ended up dying in February of 1945 along with her sister from really unknown circumstances. What has been mostly dubbed as her death was a typhus epidemic that came through the camp. This camp was very abusive. There was no gas chambers here. It was not an extermination camp, but it was very abusive. And a lot of times when somebody got sick, they would see an SS doctor, and a lot of times they would more often than not, lethally inject medicine into these patients. And there's a chance that Anne Frank may have been a victim of that. This is not actually her gravesite here. She's actually buried in one of these mass graves here. These big mound-looking things are mass graves that either have 800 or 1,000 bodies in them alone. This mass grave right here is from April 1945. 800 unknown bodies are in here. And Anne Frank meant nothing to the people that worked here. So she was just buried in a mass grave when she died. After the war was over, 6 weeks later after Anne Frank's death, the camp was liberated by the British. So had Anne Frank lived 6 more weeks' death, they died just days apart. 6 weeks later, on April 15th, the British came in and liberated the camp. And it went under Allied control. After the war was over, Anne Frank's mother was killed in Auschwitz, and her dad, Otto, actually survived. And so one of the women that was with them in Amsterdam gave the diary back to her father and said, "This is your daughter's legacy." And so it took him 3 weeks to read the diary because it was so long and it was so emotional for him to read it. Eventually, he got in contact with one of his friends who was a history professor, and the professor said, he read through the diary and he told Otto, he's like, "You need to publish this. You have to publish this." So he ended up publishing it a few years later, and it went crazy. And there were movies made about it, kids were reading about it in school, and Anne Frank's face became a staple for the Holocaust, and she represents, like I said earlier, the 1.5 million children who died in the Holocaust, and kids and people across Germany and Europe and even the United States and other places read her diaries, and they could relate to her. Obviously, they didn't go through the same experiences as her, but they could relate as she was just a normal teenage girl living a normal life that ended up being taken to the concentration camp and dying in forced slave labor. So that's the story of Anne Frank and the impact that she has had on history, and people still remember her to this day. And she had no idea that her diary would become the face of the Holocaust, but it was. And although it's very sad that they passed away, her legacy lives on today, and I think that alone is amazing and fascinating that was able to have an impact on people still to this day. And so that is the burial site of Anne Frank. Very emotional place here at Bergen-Belsen. Like I said, if you want to check out the full video, go ahead and do that. But as we pay our respects, final respects for Anne Frank here, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.